You're listening to the Productive Muslim Podcast.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Productive Muslim Podcast, the weekly podcast where we help you live a productive lifestyle so that you can be successful in this life and the hereafter.
Assalamu alaikum, productive Muslims. Welcome to the Productive Muslim Podcast. My name's Mohammed Faris. I'm the CEO and founder of Productive Muslim Company, and I'm really excited to have you all on board on this new venture, the Productive Muslim Podcast. It's been our dream for many years to launch this podcast, but subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose the time for us, and we really can't be more excited that the podcast has finally arrived. What this podcast is about? The Productive Muslim Podcast is a weekly podcast where we share tips and ways of living your life fully, connecting your spirituality to self-development and productivity. We'll bring on experts to tackle relevant topics and speak with productive individuals from all walks of life. Whether you are a stay-at-home mom, an entrepreneur, a professional, a student, this podcast will have something for you. We can't wait to get started, inshallah. Now, I want to introduce you our host for the show, Mifrah Mahroof. Some of you might know her from her other podcast, the Muslim Life Hackers podcast. Now, she has been generous enough to join us for this podcast and help us set up and launch the Productive Muslim Podcast. Mifrah has been hard at work putting all these interviews together and really thinking deeply about the structure, the content, how to edit it, how to bring this podcast to life. So we owe Mifrah to help in helping us bring the podcast to life. Mifrah, over to you, and we can't wait for you to get started.
Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you to the entire Productive Muslim team for working hard to make this a reality. My name is Mifrah Mahroof, and I'll be the host for the Productive Muslim Podcast. Alhamdulilah, it is an honor to be taking this on and facilitating the conversation on how to live our most productive life. If you are not familiar with what a podcast is, a podcast in simple terms is like an on-demand radio show. So you have a host, guests, the opportunity to send in questions, and the ability to listen to an episode whenever, wherever you like. So that means if you're driving, doing housework, going for a walk, you can listen to the Productive Muslim Podcast. You can also subscribe to this podcast by heading over to our website, productivemuslimpodcast.com, and tuning into the podcast from there. You can also subscribe to it on your mobile, and information on how to do that can be found on that site. So do subscribe and also help us get the word out there about this podcast by leaving a review for us on iTunes. You can do so by heading over to productivemuslimpodcast.com/iTunes. So guys, that wraps up our first episode. It was a pleasure meeting you all, and I hope to speak to you in the episodes to come. Till then, work hard, be sincere.